episode of Africa Today. Our main topic today is Egypt's roadmap to more stable Africa. First, let's have a look about more news from Africa and come back, so please stay tuned.
Egypt chaired the African Union's Peace and Security Council, the PSC, in October for a month-long period that rotates among the PSC's elected members. Its chairmanship ended with the unanimous approval of the Cairo Roadmap, an Egyptian document outlining ways to reinforce UN peacekeeping on the continent. In preparation for Egypt's chairmanship, Cairo undertook extensive consultations with all the involved stakeholders, including the African Union Peace and Security Commission, in order to consolidate a program of work that is truly reflective of the African peace and security priorities and in alignment with Egypt's national peace and security priorities on the continent. Egypt's permanent representative to the AU, Osama Abdel Khaliq, and its ambassador to Ethiopia said that the POW was then submitted to the Council, where it was unanimously endorsed and supported. Abdel Khaliq said the chairmanship of the PSC was a new stage in Egypt's leading role on the continent. The country has been quick to deal with the challenges facing peace and security on the African continent and had focused on reaching tangible outcomes that could be appropriately measured. The Cairo Roadmap is the outcome of a high-level regional conference held in Cairo in late 2018 and ratified during a meeting of African defense ministers held in the same city in December 2019, ranking 7th among countries contributing to UN peacekeeping forces in Africa. Egypt had presented in the roadmap recommendations to protect the interests of the African countries contributing most to those forces.
And this report was about the Egypt's roadmap to a more stable Africa and how Egypt's chairmanship to the African Union Peace and Security Council concluded with the approval of Cairo roadmap, boosting the peacekeeping missions and condemning the presence of the foreign fighters in the continent. And now we're moving to the second report about the 13th meeting of the AU's STCDSS hails Egypt's proposal to form African Counterterrorism Unit. Participants of the 13th Ordinary Meeting of the African Union's Specialized Technical Committee to Defense, Safety and Security welcomed the Egyptian President's proposal to form an African Counterterrorism Unit. More details.
Military spokesman Tamer Rifai said in a statement that participants at the 13th Ordinary Meeting of the African Union Specialized Technical Committee on Defense, Safety and Security welcomed the Egyptian President's proposal to form an African Counterterrorism Unit. In February, during the 33rd AU Summit in Addis Ababa, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said that Egypt was ready to host a special African summit to discuss setting up an African force tasked with fighting terrorism on the African continent. The participants at the 13th Ordinary Meeting also welcomed the Cairo Roadmap on enhancing peacekeeping operations proposed by Egypt in the area vision of the meeting. The meeting, which was held virtually from the 2nd to the 5th of November, aims at consolidating joint efforts across the African continent to support peace. An Egyptian delegation of representatives from the Ministers of Defense, Interior and Foreign Affairs participated in this meeting. Many decisions related to security and peace in Africa were taken. The meeting included decisions related to endorsing the Silencing the Guns in Africa by 2020 initiative created by the African Union and the AU Peace Support Operations. In December last year, Egypt hosted the 12th meeting and the 15th Ordinary Meeting of the African Chiefs of Defense Staffs in a new administrative capital. Experts and officials from the AU Peace and Security Commission participated in the meeting. The Silencing the Guns initiative is a drive to end the conflicts that plague the continent and create conditions conducive to development. The initiative serves as a roadmap for African peace and security, providing new mechanisms to bring an end to conflict, hold the spread of terrorist groups, and stem the attrition that violence and bloodshed wreak on lives, societies, and resources.
And now moving to the second report about Libya's top political leaders hold dialogue in Morocco. Libyan politicians from rival administrations met for the latest rounds of peace talks in Morocco, and the talks follow a permanent UN-backed ceasefire agreement signed in Switzerland last month. The details.
Libyan politicians from rival administrations met for the latest round of peace talks in Morocco. The lawmakers met for talks that come ahead of a major meeting in Tunisia, slated for November the 9th. The talks follow a permanent UN-backed ceasefire agreement signed in Switzerland last month, intended to pave the way towards a political solution to the country's grinding conflict. Libya, with Africa's largest proven crude oil reserves, has been racked by conflict for a nearly decade since the overthrow and killing of dictator Muammar al-Qaddafi. The lawmakers met in the coastal town in south of Morocco capital Rabat for talks that come ahead of a major meeting. It has since been dominated by armed groups and divided between two administrations that have been bitterly opposed by United Nations recognized Government of National Accord (GNA) in the capital Tripoli and a rival administration in the east backed by military strongman Khalifa Haftar. The warring factions returned to the negotiating table in September in UN-supported talks, with negotiations being held in Morocco, Egypt, and Switzerland. Details of the agenda of the talks in Morocco have not been released. Negotiators are pushing parallel efforts to broker peace, with the military section of talks taking place this week for the first time on the Libyan soil. Former enemy officers sat together in a joint military commission and agreed on a roadmap for implementing the ceasefire deal.
Welcome back. And now we are joined over the phone by Mr. Raouf Ghaffar. He is a political analyst. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hi, sir.
Hi.
First, Egypt chaired the AU's Peace and Security Council in October for a period of 1 month, and its chairmanship ended with a unanimous approval from Cairo roadmap, an Egyptian document outlining ways to reinforce UN peacekeeping on the continent. Sir, can you tell us more about this issue?
One has to say in the first beginning that the efforts of Egypt were behind all the peace agreements that were signed in the continent in the last years. I mean, with very few exceptions, Egypt was behind all the agreements that were signed. I mean, I don't want to mention, but we can go as far as the African Horn is concerned, as far as the north and south of Sudan, and we are now working hard on Libya, for instance. So, I mean, we have been always behind, and whether or not Egypt was presiding this council, it does not stop her from working hard on establishing peace and security in the continent. And as we know, regarding the peacekeeping forces, we know that Egypt is number 7 in the whole world in the United Nations peacekeeping forces. So that explains why it is important, the African continent, and that is why most of the peacekeeping forces in Africa have some Egyptians included. So, as I said, this is important. The United Nations are doing a very big job keeping peace with the United Nations peacekeeping forces all over the world. So, might as well the African peacekeeping forces, if they are from Africa itself, would be better, and they would be mobilized more quickly, and they would serve the purpose more efficiently. This is my opinion, and we know how it is to get an approval or a decision from the Security Council and the United Nations. It drags and it takes time, but if it exists, of course, the African peacekeeping forces can be made available very quickly, and they can do the job more, in my opinion, efficiently than the United Nations, and they will cost less. Again, this is my opinion. So the idea of giving importance to such force is excellent. The idea of generalizing the use of the African peacekeeping forces within the African continent is again a very useful and practical idea.
Okay, sir, can we consider that Egypt's chairmanship to the Peace and Security Council in Africa, can it be considered a new leading role for Egypt in this black continent?
I mean, you can't count the leading roles of Egypt in the African continent. I mean, we're talking development. Egypt is the pioneer. We're talking even with the COVID-19, for example. I mean, Egypt was the first country to send help and what have you, and aid to all the African states that needed it. If we are talking projects, Egypt is working in different African countries, executing, designing, and implementing projects, all kinds of projects. So, I mean, if we are talking any domain, you would always find Egypt pioneering in this domain and leading in this domain. So, the peacekeeping forces and the security and peace in the continent, Egypt should not be absent from that. And again, I repeat, whether we are on top of this council or we are not, it does not really matter, because this is a responsibility Egypt has towards the African states. And I'm sure that with the present leadership in Egypt, we will continue playing this role for anybody who needs it. So I am not surprised that Egypt in this particular field is leading, as we are in most of the different domains.
Okay, sir, heading this Peace and Security Council in Africa regards terrorism, extremism, including also the combating of the foreign fighter as a top priority. That recommends countries build a national institution capable of dealing with these issues effectively. Sir, how do you view the importance of this issue?
First of all, fighting terrorism over the last years made Egypt gain experience in this kind of work. I mean, we've done it very successfully, whether our police force or our armed forces did a great job combating terrorism on Egyptian soil, and we are very close to getting completely rid of it, inshallah. But in any event, so we have acquired accumulated experience in this field, and this entitles us to share and to give our know-how, if I call it know-how, but our experience in this matter. So this is one thing. Of course, and this is the conviction of the Egyptian leadership, that it is not allowed or permitted to any foreign force to have anything to do within Africa. And if there is an African, God forbid, of course, an African problem or misunderstanding or conflict, or even up to the extent of civil war, it should be handled by African countries and not having recourse to outsiders. So even if outsiders they come in under any pretext, whether they are legitimate forces representing one country or the other, or mercenaries and terrorists, this is completely out of line, completely refused and forbidden. And Egypt is working hard. And we have the example, of course, in our neighboring country. We are refusing utterly to have any foreign force working or doing anything under any pretext in any of the African countries. And I think that this is very wise, and this is for the best of the all African states without exceptions.
Raouf Ghaffar, a political analyst, thank you very much for joining us today. And by this, we come to the end of our episode today of Africa Today. I'm Dina Mamdouh. Thank you for watching.